Thank you very much for this very positive introduction. And yes, I do not mind being called progressive. I have a little bit of a problem with the word liberal. And of course, from time to time, I'm referred to as being liberal. But I think progressive fits is a label that I prefer more. It's very difficult, but that's a different topic, to really define who is progressive or who is liberal, who is conservative. Progressive, I think, is just a little more pleasant. So thank you very much. And of course, I know Chuck, whom you listened to this morning, and find him a soulmate in many ways. So tonight, or this morning for you, the topic is Adventist and fake news / conspiracy theories. And as I already mentioned before we started to Lauren, that I do not consider myself to be any kind of expert in this topic. But during the Corona period, I did do quite a bit of reading about it. And when we discussed a possible topic, we agreed, Lauren and I, that this might be something that the group might be interested in. So I hope we will have a good discussion afterwards. And I'll start my PowerPoint. And do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So Adventists and fake news conspiracy theories. Let me just. I'm trying to get to the, I still see quite a bit of faces from you on my screen, and I'm trying to take them away. Let's see how I do that. Not sure.
You don't need to worry about it too much. We're seeing your full screen there.
Okay, all right, good. Well, it's good to start with definitions. And according to the Collins Dictionary, fake news was in 2017 the word of the year. Because, so it said in this description, because of its ubiquitous presence. It was really all over the place. And its use increased in 1 year, the dictionary said, by 365%. And it's very likely that it has increased even more in the years following. When I Googled the word conspiracy theory a couple of weeks ago, as I was preparing for this PowerPoint, it shows that the word has 80 million hits on Google. So it's something that apparently quite a few people are interested in. What is fake news? Most experts define it as fake news is a communication that mimics the format of a news story or report, which is created with the intent to manipulate or deceive. It's often intended to promote an ideology and also to seek financial gain that is often not far away. There is a difference between fake news and false news. Both may contain disinformation, but false news does not necessarily have the intent to deceive, whereas fake news, as a rule, does have that intent to deceive. What are conspiracy theories? I have a definition here from a Dutch scholar who teaches at the University of Amsterdam. He wrote a book that is published by Routledge, The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories. And in that book, he defines a conspiracy theory as the belief that a number of actors join together in a secret agreement to achieve a hidden goal which is perceived to be unlawful or malevolent. So that's a bit wordy, but it's a belief that a number of people have together. They have a hidden goal that they want to achieve, and that hidden goal is, as a rule, unlawful, evil, malevolent. The European Union has published a significant paper about the conspiracy theories that were going around during the COVID period. And the European Union defined the conspiracy theory as a belief that certain events or situations are secretly manipulated behind the scenes by powerful forces with negative intent. So that's quite clear. These theories, they say, often appear as a logical explanation of events or situations which are difficult to understand and bring a false sense of control and agency. Well, when it says that these theories appear as a logical explanation, that is to the people who hold those theories, because to many others, they appear often very far-fetched. There is a difference between fake news and a conspiracy theory. Fake news may, however, play an important role in the development of a conspiracy theory, but the two things are not totally identical. Fake news can be more neutral. It does not always claim that some evil plot is going on. But the creators of fake news are intentionally spreading lies, while most believers and promoters of conspiracy theories tend to be genuinely convinced of the truth of what they are saying. So there is that, we are told by the experts, major difference, that the creators of fake news, they are creating what they know to be lies, whereas the believers and promoters of conspiracy theories really think, in many cases at least, that what they are saying is the truth, and they hope others will eventually also see the truth. There are a number of ingredients in conspiracy theories. Usually there is a pattern. A conspiracy theory is not built on a series of random events, but it is on the assumption that there is a connection, a definite connection between all kinds of actions and objects and people. Something is going on that is bigger than just an isolated incident. There is a pattern. There is a particular agency, a particular suspect event is caused intentionally by an intelligent actor with a plan that is carried out, usually together with others. Usually there is a coalition, various groups, human, non-human, reptiles, whatever, they are involved in this coalition. One is dealing with agents that are selfish or downright evil. And one of the ingredients, important ingredients, is there is secrecy. The actors operate in secret as long as their theory has not been exposed by hard evidence. So there are certain ingredients that conspiracy theories tend to have in common. But there is something else that is important to note when it comes to the creators of fake news and conspiracy theories and those who deny what is commonly held by the scientific community. These people who create these things, they are very selective in choosing and rejecting evidence. And I've quoted here from a book, and you see the reference there at the bottom. And according to this source, these people, they follow their confirmation bias. That is, in other words, they engage in cherry picking. That is, they accept whatever supports their ideas and ignore or reject evidence that is contrary to their hypothesis. I think that is a very key element of what we are dealing with. They tend to rely on fake experts, frequently commit logical errors while setting impossible expectations for science. So here are some of the things then that fake news and conspiracy theories have in common. There are famous examples of fake news and conspiracy theories, and I want to mention a few of these famous examples. 64 AD, the Great Fire in Rome. There was a suspicion that Nero was the arsonist, but Nero was quick to point out that this was not something that he did, but he put the blame on the Christians. They were the people, the arsonists, who put Rome on fire. Another great fire, quite a few years later in London, 1666, that was soon explained as an attack by Catholic conspirators. That was the fake news or the conspiracy theory that this was an attack by Catholics on the mostly Protestant nation of Great Britain, inhabitants of London. A group that is often presented in the connection of conspiracy theories is the Order of the Illuminati, grounded by a Bavarian in Germany, Jesuit, and there were other groups, secret communities before that, that actually also used the name, but usually when we talk about the Order of the Illuminati, this is this group that was founded in around 1903. And since then, also in Adventist circles, the Order of the Illuminati is often mentioned as a secret organization that is culpable in many different ways of many different evils. and we'll talk about them later. Excuse me, I mentioned a wrong date for the Order of the Illuminati. They were grounded in 1776 and not in 1903. 1903 is actually the date of the origin of the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And I suppose many of you have heard of this document. This was put forward as the minutes of a secret meeting of the Supreme Council of Worldwide Jewry. And they were working in secret on a plan for worldwide Jewish domination. And so this often comes back time and again as proof for the idea that the Jews want to have full dominance in this world and want to set up a kind of Jewish world government. So these are some famous examples of the past. There are others a bit more recent. Other examples, the assassination of President Kennedy. It has been linked to 42 different groups and some 214 individuals. All kinds of theories of things that were going on and that eventually cost President Kennedy his life. And we're all aware of the fact that the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center in New York has been ascribed to numerous organizations. There's all kinds of theories as to who was the reason, who was guilty of causing that attack, and including the United States government itself. In 1954, the first Bilderberg conference was held. The name Bilderberg is the name of a hotel in the Netherlands near the city of Arnhem. And there in 1954, for the first time, a group of elite people came together, people that were important in business, but also some heads of state and other important figures in politics. And they have been coming together in a conference somewhere in the world all those years since 1954, with the exception of the 2 years of the Corona crisis. And this Bilderberg conference is surrounded by a lot of secrecy. During the first 20 years of its existence, the chairman of the conference was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. He had to give up his chairmanship after it became known that he had taken money from the Lockheed company and enriched himself in that way. But you find that the Bilderberg conference and what is happening there in secrecy, that is often mentioned in the conspiracy literature in the last 40 or 50 years or so. A common element in numerous conspiracy theories is about a new world order. Secretly powerful elite, which operates through many front organizations and eventually wants to rule the entire world through an authoritarian one world government. Well, there are many recent examples of conspiracy theories. QAnon emerged as a far-right American political conspiracy, and some ludicrous claims about a ring of pedophiles who plan to overturn the government. And you have, for those of you who are in America, of course, it's mostly an American thing, QAnon, but in many places in the world, there are similar groups that also have similar ludicrous claims. The corona pandemic has given rise to a whole range of conspiracy theories. Earlier conspiracies, the anti-5G, for mobile telephone, and anti-vaccine movements, they kind of have melted together in new conspiracies. And one of the most interesting one is the ID 2020 theory, a version of the popular theory which proclaims that Bill Gates and Microsoft are doing everything they can to use the COVID-19 crisis as a pretext for mandatory vaccination programs. And then these programs for vaccination, we are told, are a cover for implanting some kind of microchip or radio frequency implantation chip or some other digital tracking device that can be used by some powerful political group or government or whatever. So these are some very recent examples of conspiracy theories. The important question, and I think we want to focus a little bit on that, is now, who are the people who are susceptible to fake news, conspiracy theories? The Dutch professor van Prooijen, whom I referred to earlier, says that it's actually all of us who want to make sense of the world around us. And that makes many people susceptible to conspiracy theories because they help people apparently to sort out, to explain what is happening around them. And these theories, then he says, are a natural reaction to situations that bring fear and uncertainty. And they help people to blame certain groups for things that worry them or give them concern or distress. These groups then, they form the they who are against us. And many people are susceptible to that kind of thinking. It's they over against us. These feelings, then, Professor van Prooijen says, these feelings of uncertainty and fear put people in a suspicious, information-seeking state of mind, leading them to perceive evil, malevolent conspiracies as responsible for a whole range of events that are happening in society. So, in other words, he says, it shouldn't really surprise us that these theories arise because they help people who are worried about things that happen around them to kind of assign some order to them, to explain them to some extent. It's us against, it's they rather against us. But others who have been writing about it say not all people are equally susceptible to believe in fake news and in conspiracy theories. There is one expert, Michael Bronstein. He teaches at Yale University, and he has published a couple of studies on what he calls delusion-prone individuals. That is, people who are likely to endorse fake news and conspiracy theories. Certain people who are more prone than others to accept implausible ideas because of their tendency to engage in less analytic and less actively open-minded thinking. So some people, he says, they are more likely to accept strange ideas because simply they don't think as much as about things and as they should be. Exploratory analyses showed that dogmatic individuals and religious fundamentalists are especially susceptible to fake news and conspiracy thinking. And of course, this, I think, interests us in particular, that people who are dogmatic, who are religious fundamentalists, they are in particular in the category of people who are more likely to believe in strange conspiracy theories. And this is also something that is underlined by two Polish experts who have written quite a bit on conspiracy theories. And they say that, and I'm quoting here, their attitude and judgment of believers in conspiracy theories tend to be based on schema-related cues. The idea that they see confirmation of certain things all around them because that all belongs to some kind of larger schema. And that's the way they think, rather than occupying themselves with thoughtful consideration. And these two scholars, they say that belief in conspiracy theory also is connected with collective narcissism in a group. Focus on themselves and feeling that they're under threat. When you have that kind of sense in a group, that will help to foster belief in conspiracy theories. So we might say that much conspirational thinking and activity is centered around politics, politicians, but religion also claims a significant share in the content of conspiracy theories. In a non-Christian environment, Christians could in the past and still can easily become scapegoats when society faces a crisis. Throughout Christian history, and we know, I think all of this, the blame for disasters was often put on Jews. They were the scapegoats, they were guilty. This happened, for instance, during the Black Death in the 14th century. It led to large-scale expulsions, persecutions of Jewish people, and everything connected with it. The Jews were often seen as causing all kinds of misery, and when something went wrong, and when there was a plague, a disaster, it was easy to blame the Jews. One group that was also often the scapegoat for disasters that took place, that often got blamed for all kinds of things, was Roman Catholicism. And in conspiracy theories in the past and in the present, the Catholic Church, in particular the papacy and the Jesuit order, provided constant inspiration for far-fetched conspiracy theories. And this is something that comes close to early Adventism, the anti-Catholic atmosphere in the United States in the 19th century, when a number of sources, a number of books were very popular and were circulating and were also read by early Adventists and are often mentioned also in early Adventist literature. Very important, two very important examples is the book Plea for the West by Lyman Beecher. And Lyman Beecher, of course, was a very interesting fellow, Presbyterian minister. He had, I believe, 13 children, and many of them were also important figures in American history. Lyman Beecher wrote the book Plea for the West, and some 140 pages of that book was explaining the conspiracies of the Jesuits and the American Catholic hierarchy, how their intention was to undermine American democracy. A book that is also mentioned, and actually maybe even more so, and until late in the 19th century, in various Adventist books, is Maria Monk's awful disclosures of the Hotel Dieu nunnery of Montreal. This was a description of the immoral and evil things that were happening in that nunnery, as if that was the rule for Catholic institutions. And that these books did much to nurture the anti-Catholic climate of that period. More recently, the publications of Jack Chick, a person who was a cartoonist mainly, but produced a flood of anti-Catholic conspiracy theories. Now, while maybe some of the facts that were mentioned in these books were perhaps partly true, it has been seen that most of it was something that fell in the category of conspiracy theories. But these things have had a long time influence even until today, and certainly also within Seventh-day Adventism. Not only were Catholics often the subject of conspiracy theories, but there's also a connection with Muslims. Muslims have often been victimized in conspiracy theories. And a recent example of a conspiracy theory in which Muslims were involved was the theories of the Norwegian fellow called Breivik, Anders Breivik. This is 2011, I believe, when he killed some 77 people. He believed that European political and academic elite is cooperating with Arab countries with the goal of increasing the level of Muslim migration to Europe and eventually turning the continent into an Islamic region. Now, he still believes this. He is in jail since 2011, and he is not likely to get out of jail very soon. But recently there was a court case. He sued the Norwegian government for something, and he was there very defiantly again in the courts, and was very clear that he still believes that he is right, and that there is this conspiracy that will give the Muslims the majority if we do not stop them. But on the other hand, the Muslims themselves are also often guilty of conspiracy thinking. And recently, during the Corona period, many Muslims have said that the Corona vaccines are developed with the aim of reducing the number of Muslims by making them infertile. But let's move to the Adventist angle, and I see our time is also moving. Members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I think we must admit, are not immune to conspiracy thinking. Some segments of our church may be more susceptible to fake news and conspiracy theories than other segments or the average population around us. But Professor Bronstein, whom I quoted earlier, would possibly include Adventists in that segment that he called dogmatic individuals and religious fundamentalists. We certainly have our fair share of those individuals in our community. And he says that they would be especially susceptible to fake news and conspiracy thinking. Popular Adventist eschatology is characterized by a hefty strain of conspirational thinking, which manifests itself clearly in distinct anti-Catholic and anti-ecumenical undertones. We believe that is official Adventist teaching, that the Catholic Church, and to a somewhat lesser extent, the Protestant denominations around us, will become the prosecutors of the end-time remnant. Many do not sufficiently realize that these end-time expectations developed in the 19th century in a staunchly anti-Catholic North American milieu. So we'll come back to that, and maybe we want to discuss that a little further. But it is clear that there is and continues to be a significant amount of suspicion towards Roman Catholics within Seventh-day Adventism. And I want to illustrate that with something that I actually witnessed from quite nearby. In 1998, Pope John Paul II published an apostolic letter entitled Dies Domini, which is in Latin, the day of the Lord. Now, many Adventists were greatly alarmed by this statement of the Pope, because in that document, which actually had a lot of good things, and most Adventists agreed that most of the theology behind the day of the Lord was quite sound. But what the Pope also said in this apostolic letter was that people should have the right to keep their day, to celebrate their day of worship, follow their conscience, and that the state should be there to guarantee that people would have the opportunity to celebrate, to worship on their Sunday. Well, of course, for many Adventists, this sounded like a beginning of the Sunday laws. It was something that they worried about, many worried about. The time has now come that the Pope is calling on the governments to enforce Sunday worship. Now, in order to find out what really the intention of the Catholic Church was, the official at the General Conference at that time in charge of public affairs and religious liberty, and I'm referring to Dr. Bert Beach, who actually he died about 3 weeks ago, as some of you may know. He has played a very important role in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in church-state relationships and relationships with other religious movements and churches. But Bert Beach, he decided to write a letter to the Vatican. And at that time, the person in charge of that department was Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict the 26th, who died just a week ago. Anyway, he wrote a letter, and I'm quoting from that letter. Bert Beach, the specific question I want to ask is whether the Pope, that is the Holy See, is in fact affirming or willing to affirm the parallel civil right of Jews, Seventh-day Adventists, Muslims, and other Christians and non-Christian groups to have their observance of their day of rest equally protected and guaranteed by law. For Seventh-day Adventists, this is a deeply felt, even prophetic issue. So he asked the Department of the Vatican, okay, you ask for protection for Sunday worship, but does that mean that you are also willing to ask for government protection for those people who worship on a different day? Or is this only for the Sunday? And it took a little while before a letter came back. And Beach, then he told me, he says, that was in fact a good sign. If I had received a letter within a week, I would have said, well, that is just some secretary who sends a token letter to get rid of the issue. But he rather received a long letter a couple of months later. And in fact, they said in that letter that we are sorry, but really that should have been mentioned also in this letter, in this document that was issued from the Vatican. The response to your question, as can be appreciated, cannot be other than affirmative. In other words, the question whether others should have the same right should also have the right to be protected by the government when they want to worship on a particular day. The answer can only be affirmative. It is undoubtedly true that the right to a day of rest in conformity to individual cult, being an integral component of the right to religious freedom, is by its very nature valid also for those pertaining to religious traditions not celebrating this day on Sunday. So that's a very long sentence, but it says, yes, of course, religious liberty demands that right, the right of Catholics to worship on their Sunday and being protected by the government to do so, that same right is also valid for people who worship on a different day. Now, about a year later, there was a general conference. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in Toronto. Was it in Toronto in the year 2000? Yeah. Well, anyway, before that quinquennial session, before that general conference, there was a special meeting for all paro directors from all over the world at different levels who happened to be in town for the general conference, who happened to be delegates or had come as visitors. And I was at that time the in charge of public affairs and religious liberty of the Trans-European Division. And I was actually also giving some talks during that meeting, but on the agenda of that meeting was also the problem of the issue of the Dies Domini. And letters were, the letter that was received from the Vatican saying what I just read to you, that also people not worshiping on Sunday should have the right to be protected. That letter was distributed, it was read, but I had expected that people would react very, very positive, but there were only a few people who reacted positives. But most people, it was widespread suspicion. Because people believed, and we are talking here about, functionaries of the church at different levels, directors of pastoral departments, they expressed as their response that, as their answer, that this response that had come from the Vatican, that could not be genuine, that must be fake, because the Catholic Church would not agree to give Sabbath keepers protection. In fact, that was the opposite of what they were after. So after a long discussion, it was simply not possible to convince the majority of the people there that the Catholics were genuine, because there was this widespread belief that is so common among Seventh-day Adventists, that the Catholics are up to no good and that they are involved in some kind of conspiracy to make life for Adventists and others who do not agree with them very difficult indeed. We find that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have many independent speakers and authors, and we have a number of influential ministries who frequently blend their eschatological messages, their messages about the time of the end, with fake news or false news, and often blend conspirational theories in their presentations. Now, one person like that, for instance, is David Gates. You may have heard that name. Independent Adventist evangelist who speaks to audiences around the world. He has been particularly active in the Corona time, promoting the idea that vaccines against COVID, together with the 5G signal, etc., are Satan's tools to destroy humanity and make human beings into automatons. Well, there are all kinds of websites on the fringe of the church, but let me just mention one, Fulcrum 7. I look at that website from time to time to see what they're up to, and that is certainly a website that fits into this category of constantly promoting conspirational theories. Maybe I should also mention the one project that was an initiative after 2010. A few Adventist pastors started a movement of having meetings that focused on Jesus Christ, the one, but there was a continuous harassment, continuous array of suspicions. The one project was representing liberal Adventism and was rejecting key Adventist doctrines or ignoring key Adventist doctrines. And these accusations came in particular from people who had never attended a one project meeting. BRI, Biblical Research Institute, got involved at one point at the request of the GC leaders. The response was somewhat, what is the word? There were some in that department who felt that this was indeed a dangerous movement, while others who studied it a little further found that there was little that they could complain about. And even a person like Bill Johnson, former editor of the Adventist Review, came to the defense of the one project. He had been there, he had seen what was going on, and he was very angry about the fact that the church would be negative about something like that just based on rumors and fake news. When we talk about fake news and conspiracy theories, then certainly there is one person that we need to mention. Walter White is a prime example of speakers, independent speakers who circulate fake news, conspiracy theories. His ministry is called the Amazing Discoveries Ministries. It is certainly amazing, some of the things that he claims. His favorite topics is about the Illuminati and other secret societies, about the role of the Jesuits and the New World Order. And he believes that there are quite a few Jesuits circulating within the Adventist movement, and they are a threat from within the church. Jesuits who have been planted and who are doing their evil work while they pretend to be positive leaders and ministers in the church. And unfortunately, well, maybe I shouldn't worry about it, but he is clear that I am among the group of Jesuits that is operating within the church. I met Walter White for the first time about 20 years ago in Canada, and we were at a meeting where we were both invited as speakers. A more unlikely combo of speakers, I suppose, could not have been thought of. But anyway, he is clear that there are all kinds of influences within the church without any real proof. And certainly that fits in the category of conspiracy theories. He has all kinds of ideas about the Catholics that are really very far-fetched, and believes that Islam is a Catholic-sponsored organization. And he also is very convinced that most Bible translations are corrupted by the Catholics, and even some of the famous manuscripts that translators use nowadays, manuscripts like the Codex Sinaiticus, etc. He says they are just Catholic inventions, something that the Catholics have put forward in order to corrupt the Bible. And it's only the King James Version that can be trusted. So that's Walter White, and I wished that the Biblical Research Institute would be a bit more energetic in actually pursuing people like Walter White and making sure that people feel that their theories must really be rejected. Let me mention just a few more fake news examples. 2013, a story began to circulate that the brother of Pope Francis had become a Seventh-day Adventist, had been a Seventh-day Adventist already for 52 years. And this brother had discussed the Adventist message with the future Pope, and the Pope Francis had vowed, or his brother who would become Pope Francis had vowed that one day he would deal with the Adventist movement by means of a global Sunday law. Now, this was distributed worldwide. There was a document that was going around, and this supposedly was based on a video message of a former Argentinian Adventist pastor. Thousands of people, Adventists around the globe, believed in it, but it was extensively investigated and the story proved to be totally false. But this was a very important example of fake news that was circulating widely in the Adventist Church and was believed widely. 2017, there was a rumor circulating that Russia was about to ban the Seventh-day Adventist Church in its territory. Of course, the leaders of the church in Russia were very concerned, but they could convince us that this was a story that was completely fake, completely untrue. 2008, the news was spread that a secret high-level meeting had taken place in the United States where Sunday laws had been discussed. There had been, it was said, a meeting between Pope Benedict and President George Bush when the Pope visited the USA in April of 2008. No proof, but of course, this news was believed by many people who were expecting Sunday laws to be passed before too long. And same year, mention of another secret meeting that was taking place in Washington, also about plans to mandate global Sunday worship. Because there is this idea, and we know where it comes from, that in the time of the end, Sunday laws will come, and so there is constantly this idea that there are secret meetings going on to foster that particular idea. There are elements in our end time scenario, I'm afraid, that we must admit help us or help many people in their conspiracy thinking, stimulate conspiracy thinking. And you know, these elements, the great controversy and the role of that book in our church, the whole issue of Sabbath, Sunday, the mark of the beast and the seal of God, the Sunday laws, the role of Catholicism, and the idea that there will be a major apostasy. We speak of the Alpha and the Omega. There are books with that title. The role of the United States in this whole end time thing. All these things, they stimulate conspiracy thinking, and perhaps we can discuss that a little further. Let me end with a statement that was made by somebody who is known for the topic of cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger. He has been dead for a while, but he is the father of the cognitive dissonance theory, the idea that even though when things are proven to be false, there is a tendency to hang on to that theory because people have invested so much in that theory already. And so even though it does not agree with the current state of science or discoveries, people just continue to believe. Festinger wrote in his book about this theory, his book, When Prophecy Fails. A man, he says, with a conviction is a hard man to change. And I think we could also say a woman, a person with a conviction is a hard person to change. Tell him you disagree, and he turns away. Show him the facts or figures, and he questions your sources. Appeal to logic, and he fails to see your point. And I think that is unfortunately the experience of many of us. When we have tried to talk with people who believe in these conspiracy theories, who are prone to accept fake news, when we talk to them, they disagree, they will just stop talking to us. When we show them the facts, the figures, they say, well, there are other sources, there are other figures, and what you tell us is really very biased. And then when you appeal to their logic, they fail to see your point. It's very difficult to talk with people who believe in fake news and who are convinced of the conspiracy theories that go around in society and in the church.